That was beautiful. reminds me of, as Ajahn Munissara is probably familiar with, how they do that in Thailand. Exactly the same tune, slightly different pronunciation. And it's all very lofty, but of course, my little mind always thinks when it starts, it sounds like Humpty Dumpty. There's that part that's like Humpty, and I'm always like Dumpty. Anyway, so now I should do something like proper, like Namo Tassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Buddhang Dhammang Sanghang Namasami. So, what should I talk about? As I was looking at the shrine in Jason's little kuti, Jason and Abby's house, I saw a picture of, I guess it must have been your after Vasa. It's called the almsgiving ceremony, aka the katina you do when you only have 2 bhikkhus. But I was thinking, wow, that's a really big group of people. And such a diverse group, too. I mean, it's just little faces, but I'm like, looks like there's young people, old people, people of all different kind of ethnicities, genders, just really refreshingly diverse. I mean, the Buddhist society in Western Australia is also very diverse, but I hadn't really been on the American Dharma scene for, since I was in my 20s. So I don't think it was as diverse back then. And so it's just lovely to see that. And I thought it was just because it was a big event like the alms gathering that there were so many people. But I'm like, oh God, there's just many people today, it seems like. And this is just your regular Saturday gathering, which is really a testament to what a thriving community you've managed to bring together in just a few years, isn't it, since you've been here? It's sadhu to that, times 3. Yeah, to be efficient. And so I feel so at home, because I grew up going to international school. I just have such a lot of experience living in different countries, so it's very hard to say, where are you from? And I'm like, California, just kidding. And I'm not. I've never lived in California. So everybody tells me I sound like I do, but I don't know why. And so I feel, and I always felt really at home in New York City. It's the only place I felt like I didn't have to explain who I was, where I was from, blah, 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 and you could just be anything, anywhere, and you would just fit in. And I kind of feel like that here. And that's such a, I feel so at home. It's so nice. Even though I've never, been here for 3 days. But the thing is, diversity is, it's become a catchphrase. And it almost loses the profundity of its meaning when it just becomes like just another kind of issue we have to work on. There's, in our organizations, let's increase the diversity in our schools and our whatever. Although apparently the trend, the person driving me yesterday was like shocking me with all this news about Trump, which I, living under my rock, didn't quite know about. But that it's going in the other way, and I'm so glad to see that there's a bastion of, place where there isn't. And I feel that there's diversity on so many levels. Being a nun, we were just talking about this at the cafe. We really are very attuned to the diversity or lack of diversity in Buddhist organizations at a gender level, and especially in the monastic institutions that exist. And I don't really want to get into political aspects and that kind of thing, but just noticing what diversity brings into our experience, not just as an ideal, not just as a sort of like a concept or as some kind of political goal that we are, or agenda that we're trying to work towards, but why? What's the point? Is it just to have a nice photo at the alms gathering that's like, look, everybody's represented, yeah, or what? And part of my answer, came the other day when I was able. I want to go there again. See, I thought I would just go visit Ayya Anandabodhi once, but I'm like, oh, she's so cool. Can I come again? And that's just it. It's for me. I'm already a nun, right? But it was relatively new to me I've been practicing Buddhism for gosh, you could say since I was a kid in a way, and it was kind of a really new experience for me to hear Dhamma teachings from women, even as a nun, right? It's so bizarre, but. Of course, in the monastery I started in Chiang Mai in Thailand, it was all women's. It was a Bhikkhuni center founded by people who had started it as a Machi center. Machi is like the 8 precept nun kind of option that existed previously. And we were surrounded by women, but we heard the voices of women there too. But it was almost like it always felt like just our in circle, like, okay, this is just our little group. And beyond that, I hadn't really heard much Dhamma from women. And it was only actually when I went to visit Dhammasara, where I am now. It's the Nuns Monastery in Gijigannab outside of Perth, Western Australia, which began as a 10-precept nun place, because again, this predated the whole Bhikkhuni ordination thing, but has now, after the first 4 nuns took Bhikkhuni ordination, we are now a Bhikkhuni monastery. And it was the first time I went to their library and I was like, wow, we have a section. It's only one shelf, but we have a section that is like meditation. Is this cutting out? Okay. Can you hear me in the back? Okay. So meditation and Dhamma teachings by nuns, and I was like, wow, I hadn't seen that many represented before. Even in one bookshelf, I had never really. And so I got this book, again, Efficiency. I'm not an efficient person. I don't know why I keep on talking about this, but there was a book, a compilation, anthology of different women teachers. And I remember feeling like, this is so weird. I've never heard these voices before. And they kind of talked about stuff I never really heard about before. And I felt this even more when I actually went to live at Dhammasara to join their community. Everybody was listening to Pema Chodron. I was like, are we Theravada monastery? But everybody was, we have like sort of like book recommendation type things when we talk to each other, or like, and I was like, okay, I'd heard of her. When I lived in America, I used to, browse the Buddhism sections in Barnes and Nobles or whatever, and it'd always be like 3 people. It'd be like the Dalai Lama, Thich Nhat Hanh, and Pema Chodron. And I remember thinking, everybody seems to be reading her. That must mean she's like for the masses, like lowbrow. What a snob. And I was like, I don't just read what everybody reads. I'm not going to read her. Interestingly enough, I had no problem reading His Holiness the Dalai Lama stuff, even though more people read him, so it's like totally more populist. But for some reason, but like the woman one, you're like, it was so strange, my reaction. And so I was so dumb. It took me, I delayed my revelations that I finally got when I listened to her when I moved to Dhammasara. And I'm like, wow, how to deal with your emotions? I'm like, how come I never heard anybody talk about this when I was listening to monks? Sorry to say, Ajahn Munissara seems very emotionally aware, so I'm sure this doesn't apply to him. But yeah, I it seemed like it's such a basic part of our experience. It's like, how come I'd never noticed that this was a hole in my Dhamma practice? How could I have never even noticed that, like, this is something that I didn't know how to deal with, I was already a nun for, like, 6, 7 years by then. I'd been practicing Dharma for even longer. I was like, it was interesting because I told you I can't get to the point, so we'll just have to do random meandering, and there'll be nothing at all like what I thought I'd be talking about. But the psychiatrist I was seeing back when I was in my 20s, when I was diagnosed with bipolar, he said once to me, "Why don't you just feel what you feel?" As I'm trying to analyze with him. I'm feeling really anxious. I don't know why. This happened yesterday. That happened. I'm not sure why I feel. And he's like, "What? How about?" He said in the most mild, way, and it was just a one-liner. Why not just feel what you feel? And I remember looking at him and being completely like incomprehensible. Like, what does he mean by this? And so I went back to my analyzing and figuring out, whether it's justified that I'm anxious, or is it just my bipolar coming up, or like what's going on, or am I just like an inveterate worry ward, or what, But the idea of feeling what I feel, it completely, it did not translate. It was like Woodstock language in the Peanuts, he's like talking Woodstock language, and I cannot understand it. And that was like in my 20s. It was only when I was like 30. When did I go over to Dhammasara? Oh, I can't do math, like 37, 30, something, I don't know, something like that. When I started listening to your stuff, and I'm like, oh, you kind of feel your emotions in your body, and then you kind of, anytime even if you're thinking about it, it's actually a form of escape. I'm like, escape? I've been escaping? And yeah, that anything is a form of exit if you're not feeling the raw feeling of the emotion. And you just have to feel it. You can use techniques like breathing it into your heart, which I've never heard from a man say that, breathe it into your heart. What's the heart, right? Breathe it into your heart and, sort of open around it and that kind of thing. I was like, revelation. I was like binge listening to like Pema Chodron that Vasa. It's like I'm supposed to meditate, but just one more CD. It was a time of CDs for crying out loud. And and that to me I was like, oh, it's true. There is a different voice when the Dharma is being expressed by a woman, by a nun. It is true. I'm always anti-cliche. Anytime I've heard that before, I'm like, yeah. I mean, they keep on saying that. But it's true. It's true. And I remember, so of course, there are not that many women heroines in terms of, role models we can have as women. Not anymore, I'm going to say. It's increasing. But one of my heroines is Jetsuma Tenzin Palmo. I'm sure many of you have heard of her. She's like, celebrity nun, Cave in the Snow. Who hasn't read it? If you haven't read it? Okay, so then I remember watching this video clip of her on YouTube. It was very short, but she said something to this effect that, we have never heard the voice of the Dharma, a female voice of the Dharma, and we wouldn't know what it would say. And that is her heart's wish, is to help that bring about. And I remember, I think if I watched it today, it would still make me cry. Just something about it, it just makes me cry. I'll show you. Because you just feel like, yeah, this is an unheard voice, and it's sad that it hasn't been heard, not just for women, but for everybody. What have we been missing this whole time? And what a loss that has been. And what enrichment it could bring if we heard that voice more. And that voice doesn't have to sound any particular way. Again, there's those stereotypical women, let me tell you. And it's something, but there's something to be expressed that's different because our experience is different, first of all. And our way of perceiving things or, giving importance to things when we observe things will be different, and our way of receiving them or dealing with them or reacting to them will be different, and even the way we express ourselves will be different. I know sometimes it's a little bit politically incorrect. I mean, gosh, what a funny term. I mean, what's politically incorrect is what's politically correct right now. But it's kind of politically incorrect to say that, oh, women are like this, men are like that, women are from Venus, men are from Mars. We're supposed to say that's not true. But the more I've lived as a nun in a nun's monastery, I'm kind of like, yeah, there's something to it. There's something to it. And it's, so yes, it will be different, this voice. And I wasn't planning to talk about this, because again, it was like a totally stereotyped woman thing. I'm going to talk about why it's so important for us to speak and be there to represent the Dhamma. It's like tooting your own horn, but I think it needs to be said, so I've said it. But it's just not that gender diversity. It's any kind of diversity on our spiritual path. And I was really enriched by those long car drives I've had with, how many have I had now? Two or three, something like that. And talking to the person who was driving me, it's like I learned so much about how people practice. It's very, what's the word? It encompasses many different kinds of practice. And I notice how the people coming here today will probably be, some of them will be the same faces going to Ayya Ananda Bodhi's place. And on Jason Suplicio's shrine, there is, a picture of a Rinpoche. I was like, oh, cool. My secret Tibetan leadings are not very secret, so it's like, Rinpoche, he likes Rinpoches too, and yet he's some Clear Mountain Theravada guy. Ooh, interesting. And but this seems to be normal, because like the ladies driving me in the car were like talking about all the different practices they do that are from different Buddhist traditions, but also different teachers within different traditions within the same tradition. That there's always diversity within diversity, and also the non-Buddhist, but things related to mind, whether it's somatic therapy, whether it's some kind of psychotherapy, whether it's able to be held in a way that it's working for them. And we are often told, when you come from a more like homogeneous kind of practice lineage, that you get confused if you go around and do too many things. You should just sort of start with one, stick with one, and kind of get something coherent. And maybe that's true. Maybe in the beginning that's helpful, but I don't think necessarily there's any one way to do it. And if I had said, oh, Pema Chodron, she's got like those funny dots over the O's, like it's not going to mix with my practice, I would still not know how to feel the feeling. And I have to say, my psychiatrist was male, so let's not make this overly gender, whatever. But I would have been like still like like so completely emotionally, what's the word? Like not completely shut down, but just really not able to make any kind of sense of them, or not even sense of them, but just to be emotionally competent. Had I not gone outside of Theravada, and I don't feel it confused me. It enlightened me, and it's something which I feel if we develop an open-minded approach to our spiritual practice, we will actually have access to more tools that we might be needing at that particular time. I feel like such a heretic, but I can say this now because I'm not. It's so ironic because, when I go back in November, I'm supposed to help teach this early Buddhist text series of workshops on the gradual training using quotations from the suttas, the early Buddhist texts. And I'm kind of like, am I allowed to use examples from Tibetan Buddhism in this? I'm like, no, I better play it straight. I better play it straight because I'm just, sort of one of the more, younger teachers. So I'm like, I think I'll play it straight for that. But here I'm out of the box, and I can talk to you all about my Tibetan weirdness. And not weirdness, sorry, but like, my interest in other stuffs. And I really feel like that diversity is important because it enables us to address what it is we need with the practices we need at that time. And that can come from different things. We were talking about the Enneagram a lot in the car yesterday. How many of you know about that? Yeah, right? I went to a small workshop on that long ago when I was still a layperson. And I thought, oh wow, like that's another thing. I was like, I couldn't have learned how to understand myself or other people just by reading the suttas in this way. And I still use that very much in just the rudimentary knowledge I had from that one workshop, but I still use it to this day. And I feel like that has really enriched my practice. And so having diversity within your spiritual life is also really important. And to be able to be open to that, I have a deep fear of becoming parochial. So I notice what I always do, wherever I am, it's like I'm always kind of like half, my nose is in the book and something half outside of wherever I am. So when I was in Thailand at a nuns monastery, we don't have a lineage, right? So we weren't necessarily like a forest tradition or non-forest tradition. We were just kind of whatever it is the teacher wanted to teach us. And she sort of had a somewhat Burmese meditation background and was sort of somewhat versed. I think she was, somewhat Abhidhammic in her, but she also really loved the suttas, and so she taught a lot from the suttas. And so it was kind of like a mix, but there was a lot of study going on in that monastery and a lot of like programs for the lay people. It's a very active monastery. And I'd be like, I want to be in a meditative monastery, and I don't know about all this Abhidhamma stuff. I don't want to draw these circles, and I don't get it. And so I would be like secretly listening to Ajahn Brahm, in my off time. And when I have a chance of personal retreat, I just pretend I'm in Western Australia, and I like listen to his talks, and I meditate the way he teaches and all this stuff. And I thought that's because that's my true Dharma home. But then when I actually got to Western Australia, I'm like, during the Vasa, I'm like listening to Pema Chodron, Tenzin Palmo, and I'm like always not doing the thing that's the main thing only, because I have a deep suspicion of doing one thing only and the main thing only, and because that breeds fundamentalism, and I am deeply afraid of fundamentalism at any level, not just at the broad brushstrokes of like fashion, that's scary in of itself, but any kind of fundamentalism, even in your spiritual life, I think is, first of all, it's distorting, but second of all, it's narrowing, and it's confining, and it leads to rigidity of your views about what's on and what isn't. We all seek that at some level. We want clear mountain, right? We want clarity. You want clarity about what is right and what is wrong and how to practice and whether my practice is going in the right way and all this stuff, because clarity gives us a sense of security. So at some level, we seek that. And at some level, that is what we're supposed to develop. We are supposed to develop clarity. But that kind of clarity is like a 360-degree clarity. It's a clarity that sees wide open. It's not the clarity that comes from like the sort of like simplistic clarity of being able to draw things in black and white. Yes and no, right and wrong, good and bad, and here I stand, That's a sort of like fake clarity that gives you fake security. And most of us like it because it's easier to develop. Right? But at some level we know it's not the real thing. And the thing is, when we take it to be the real thing, we miss the real thing. And the problem is, we get snooty about the real thing that we think we know, but isn't the real thing. Do you know what I'm saying? Probably not. But I remember one of the nuns asked, we have like a kind of Q&A ovada with Ajahn Bali every so often, every 2 weeks or so. He's very kind to offer that to us. And someone asked about this. It was really funny because the question was kind of almost sort of directed at him. Ajahn Bali, you're listening, please forgive me. But but like he's early Buddhist text man, right? And so some people kind of, I don't know if you all may not, I feel like I talk about these people as if everybody knows them, but maybe that's because I'm from Western Australia. But anyway, if you don't know him, he's one of the teachers who teach out of our center, and he's known to be like the sutta guy. He loves the suttas, knows the suttas, everything suttas. And so some people are like, you know, how do you go about being sort of like really devoted to the suttas and not coming off as fundamentalistic? And he said, you know, it was very insightful. He said, you know what? Until you are at the level of stream entry, Sotāpanna, and you've actually penetrated right view, you have real bona fide right view, any kind of view is just a view. So even a view that only the earliest Buddhist texts are really authentic, really know what they're talking about in terms of what the Buddha really taught, that is still just a view if you're just walking around not being a Sotāpanna. That's just a view. Anybody who says commentaries, that's later additions. That's not the real thing. Just a view, unless you can show me your ID card that I'm a Sotāpanna, I've got right view, then it's just a view. So if you look inside yourself and you're like, I don't think I'm a card-carrying Sotāpanna yet, then any view you have, my dear, I'm sorry, is just a view. And so knowing that means let's be open to other views, because mine's only just little v view. And it could be freaking wrong little v view too. I don't know. We all think we're right. So you better suspect the voice in your head that tells you, but I'm right. Because that's just a view. That's just a view. And just because we feel like we're right, it doesn't mean anything, because we all feel like we're right. We all do. So you can't be the only one who's right, unless you really are, which I am. Then you know, we have to hold our views really lightly, with a lot of open hand and skeptical mind, because our view is just a part of the picture. And to be able to learn the Dhamma from anywhere, this is what I most enjoyed on a long-haul flight, even as a young student who had to, you know, go back and forth between Asia and America all the time. And I loved the long-haul flight because it was like free in-flight entertainment the whole way. And even though my eyes were about to fall out of my sockets because I'd been watching hour upon hour, and I was so dead tired, I felt obligated to suck out every minute of in-flight free entertainment I could get. And I'm a bit older now, so I said, you know, I'll sleep when I'm tired. But it's hard to sleep on the plane, and it's hard to meditate, I have to tell you, unless you're like some, you know, whatever you, super meditation master. It's hard to meditate on a plane when like someone's sitting right next to you. So then my allowable in-flight entertainment is documentaries and podcast type things. They don't have Clear Mountain podcast on Delta Airlines. Please put it on there. Then I would have endless hours of allowable TV. But the thing is, you know why I like doing that? It's not just to fill in the time, but because I rarely have the opportunity to be exposed to material that's outside the, you know, conventional Buddha Dhamma box. You know, we do have a section in our library that's like psychology types of books, and I noticed they're very popular because I'm the librarian, shout out to librarians, and I shelve the books and I know who checks out what, and that's a very popular section, even though we're like Buddhist nuns supposing to be reading the suttas. And so I like that though. I like that it's popular because it means our nuns, we are not just, you know, narrowing ourselves, that the only truth, the only insight, the only valuable methods are to be found in one bookshelf. And and that there's a lot of, once you make the Dhamma the center of everything in your life, everything you're exposed to will be funneled through the lens of Dharma. And so I don't feel too illicit watching the random documentary about Muhammad Ali or what did I watch? It was so fascinating. This podcast on a Butler Academy. Butlers have to be trained somewhere. So they have an academy in the Netherlands. And you're like, aren't butlers English? But no, in the Netherlands, apparently, is the elite Butler Academy. And you're like, butlers. What do I know about butlers? I've never had a butler. But they're often in movies and novels because butlers are sort of like, they're a symbol of something. And what is that something? Well, these butlers were telling me in this podcast that their life is the life of basically putting others before themselves. It's a life of service. And they said it's a very rewarding job. And at first I was like, it is? Like your whole life is like, yes, sir. And you need your shoes polished, sir. And what would you like for dinner, sir? Or whatever. It's like, I don't know, it seems like drudgery and slavery to me. But no, from a passionate butler, the butler's life is a life of service. It's a life of whatever it is you need, however is it you like, I will make it happen for you because you are more central than me. And he said it's such a rewarding job because of the smile or the thank you might get for something you did. And to me, that was such a beautiful, beautiful expression of the human life, actually. If we all could live like a butler does in that way, with that kind of heart, that would be a way to express the spiritual path, And so I had a lot of insights from watching that Butler Academy, which I'm not kidding. That's why also I couldn't watch back to back anymore because I needed time to process and tease out and draw out all the spiritual insights I was getting from these things I was watching. And I felt that sometimes you need to do that to understand a Dharma point. If you're just doing it from and Samyutta Nikaya 47.2 says this, sometimes you don't get it. And that's something I really appreciate about Ajahn Brahm, my teacher. And hey, how long am I going for? I'm not good with time. Where are we? We're only doing this till 10:30, right? Oops.
No. You're good. You can keep talking until.
Oh, okay.
Cut off officially, but
10:50 is the cutoff. But then there's no Q&A, so I'm going to stop because I like Q's. I like Q's. I don't know if you like the A's, but I like the Q's. So, but basically, what I really appreciate about great Dharma teachers, and I would say that would be capital B Buddha is the first one, is that they're great at drawing similes from something completely unrelated to make a Dharma point in a way that you can actually understand. Because the endless repetitions of whatever it is that is in the suttas, you get lost in them. But just that kind of judo move where you go and do a slight detour and you come back. That's how I get things. And so that's why I like doing things like reading things outside of the Buddhist world or watching things outside of the Buddhist world, in moderation, because sometimes that's how I get the aha. And I feel if we're open to that, our spiritual life is so much richer. And so it's really in our interest to be open and to be kind of free in that sense, free to explore and free to be taught by anything. There's this famous Ajahn Buddhadasa quote where he's like, the trees and the rocks and the leaves and all are all teaching Dharma. And I'm like, yes, my version is the podcasts and the New Yorker magazine and the whatever it is that passes by as you're looking out the window of the car, that is teaching you Dharma, if you look in the right way. So I offer this over time little reflection, and now open up to Q&A for any interesting, fascinating questions that you would like to pose.
Handamayam Dhammakataya Sadhu Karam Dhammasara Sadhu, 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 anumodami.
Okay, so do you call on people or do I call on people? I call on people. Who's the people, please? Do you want a mic?
Oh, she'll get a mic right
Okay.
over.
Thank you so much for the talk and for being here and for your practice. I probably have maybe a standard question in reaction to the flexibility that you're offering is when you have, when you see things through Dharma, it seems very valid to explore everything. But when I reflect on things that I have, by teachers, I would not have believed them for sure. I was wrong about so many things, and if I go with my lectures and podcasts and all the stuff that I like, it would worry me that I wouldn't have enough confidence in the Buddhist teachings without the teachers really almost preaching that in a way where I can feel their conviction in a confident way. I don't know if that is the right framing, but probably you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, and I understand exactly what you're saying, and I experience it as well. I've experienced it, and I experience it now. And I think the thing about what I find so reassuring about the way the Buddha laid out the path is this idea of that, well, you really have to know for yourself, and we have to develop the confidence in our ability to know for ourselves, even when we're like, how can we know? I'm so filled with doubt and, lack of clarity. But, strangely, I think deep down, we have something in there that does know. But until we can be confident in our ability to access that and to be able to tell which one is the one that knows and which one is the one that's confused, who's speaking right now, then do what feels most helpful at that time. So in the beginning, I too was so confused. And even within theravada Buddhist world, there's so many conflicting ideas about how to practice, what's right, what's wrong, that I was like, I just want to find my teacher, capital T teacher. Will just, I can just follow what he says for a while, for a long while. But, I need a bit of mooring, some kind of anchoring. And that's what I needed at the time. And so I said to the universe, APB on capital T teacher. Want to meet him or her? No, I definitely thought it was a him back then, because how many hers were there? So just send my way. I need it now. And otherwise, I feel I can't do anything. I feel I'm scared of doing the wrong kind of practice, And so at that time, it floated to me. And then I really just kind of was a bit listening only to that for a while. And so, but then after a while, you feel like, okay, I get it. I have some sort of coherence in something that I can make sense of the other stuff, so in a way it doesn't conflict. Then I felt ready to explore more. But I always use as my sort of cross-reference is it working for me? Is it helping me actually develop more wholesome mind states, less unwholesome mind states? This is such an easy litmus test. And I felt that we can only actually feel our way through this path, because what is right for anybody at any particular time will be different. And no one else can really tell you even a psychic teacher, believe me, I've chased many psychic teachers, and they've always sent me back to myself in the sense that it never worked out, where I was like looking for like, tell me if I'm practicing right. I never got the answer from them. And so it's like, oh, I forgot to ask him to confirm my practice, It's like, oh, too late. And so then I really felt, at the end of the day, it comes back to, is it working for you? Is listening only to, something quite limited for now working for you? And is going casting the net wide only confusing you more? Then don't cast the net wide right now. But if after a while you feel a bit confined or you're a bit curious about, well, what does someone else say about this? I'm not saying my teacher is wrong, but anyway, I can't believe him until I actually know for myself anyway. So at the end of the day, it boils down to me actually being able to understand it for myself. So then explore, and if that's helpful for you, then keep doing it. And if it's not, then stop. There's always this kind of flexibility in the sense of you are the captain of your ship. So you can steer in whatever direction, drop anchor when you want to, pull up anchor when you want to, send out little exploration boats when you want to, or feel you need to. And that's very freeing and empowering, because we all want to know if we're doing it wrong, don't we? And are we on the path, off the path, near the path, And over time, I've been developing confidence that I do know, even in my most confused states, there is something inside me that is still sane and knows it knows. And I can still connect with that, even when my mind is really not in its clear space. So imagine when it's in its clear space. So we have to cultivate that ability to tell which is that clear voice, and to trust that we have it, to trust that it knows. And this all sounds like gobbledygook, platitude speak, but there is something to it, and I encourage you to try to develop a kind of attunement to that, and trust. I hated that word before. People always told me to trust. I'm like, trust what? Trust what? Tell me what to trust and how to trust. But now I kind of get it. And no one can tell you how to do it. But eventually, I feel we all learn how to find that place to trust and to do it. So, trust me. Okay. Anybody else? Yes? Sorry, I don't know your name, so...
Thank you for the talk. So I'm really interested in how women have gotten a voice in this practice, because I think what you said is exactly right on. And the world itself in every area needs an equal balance of female-male voices, and the dearth of that is, I think, one of the reasons we're in the situation that we're in. But can you tell a little bit about the history of it? And because the way you just said it, like there were no female nuns when you were young, so it's a fairly new, or very few. So it's a fairly new thing coming on. Like there's more and more women, or
yeah, it's the word nun is such a complicated word, because it comes from an English. It comes from a Western context when it's clear what's a nun, right? It's the Catholic sister who told you to do your homework, But in a especially Southeast Asian or South Asian Buddhist context, I'm a historian too, in the sense of I like to approach things in terms of history. So let's do a quick rundown. Okay, Buddhist time, 2000 whatever, 500 plus years ago. First there was him, then there were monks, and then there was his foster mother who was like, hey, what about us? Can we ordain? And he's like, no. And Ananda's like, why not? And he's like, fine. And we're all like, why did it take you 3 times? But anyway, he did it. He allowed the women to ordain. And so then they had the Bhikkhunis, the fully ordained. He's a bhikkhu, I'm a bhikkhuni. We're, not quite on par apparently, but, I think so. And so these are both fully ordained monastic members of the Fourfold Assembly. It's not called the Fourfold Sangha. Let me make that clear. The word is Parisa Assembly, and that includes also those Ubasikas he was talking about, and the Ubasakas. That's the male and female devotees are apparently supposed to go to Kmart and buy white sweatshirts and sweatpants tomorrow. And so these are the 4 pillars of the Buddhist assembly. And so this is how it was set up. But then, okay, so from India to Sri Lanka, they had the king of Sri Lanka invited bhikkhu and then a bhikkhuni, brother and sister, how cool is that, to come and bring the ordination of the monastic order to Sri Lanka. And so the famous Sanghamitta Teri, the only one we ever know about, her pictures at least are in Sri Lanka. Okay, she brought it over, then ordained a bunch of women in Sri Lanka, and then the lineage flourished, let me say the word, flourished for centuries. But then war is bad, because war wipes out the Sangha. And then they wiped out the Bhikkhu and the Bhikkhuni Sangha. And then they were like, oh no more monks. And then at some point when the war had died down, they invited some monks from Burma and Thailand to restart the Bhikkhu order in Sri Lanka. Yay, Bhikkhus are back. And I don't know, was it like they forgot that second part of the to-do list, or it wasn't on the to-do list, but it was like, did not invite Bhikkhuni Sangha to come and revive the Bhikkhunis, and so they died out. It's like, I don't get it. Like, the whole society who used to have both, how could they just forget that, like, oh yeah, we need to revive the other one? It's just so strange. But then there's no historical records that explain this story. But apparently, okay, nobody remembered to do it or wanted to do it or whatever. It didn't happen. So then the Bhikkhuni lineage within the Theravada, so-called, we won't go there, but anyway, we'll just call it Theravada for now. That had a sort of hiatus, a long hiatus, but not to worry, because Buddhism had also spread to East Asia, China, all these places. And in China, just like in the original Sri Lanka, who said that we're progressive? Okay, way back then, the societies were like, okay, we'll invite monks, and then we'll invite nuns. We will also start the nuns order in East Asia, in China, all these places. And so they invited a nun from where? From where? Sri Lanka. So it was actually some, nice Sri Lankan looking person who went all the way to China, learned Chinese so that they could do the ordination in a way that both sides understand. I spent years trying to learn Chinese. I couldn't learn Chinese properly. And this Sri Lankan nun managed to learn Chinese and conduct the ordination. And then they had all these, nuns in East Asia that have continued that lineage unbroken until this time. And then, so back in the mid-1990s, 1996, there was sort of a growing movement where some Sri Lankan lay devotees, especially this one very sort of, devoted woman named Ranjini De Silva, she and, well, not just her, but because there's a biography about her, you can look it up. That's why I mentioned her name. So she and a bunch of people, they were trying to revive it. They convinced some 10 precept nuns who existed there to take the higher ordination. Okay, here's where we go. Footnote, explain these other nuns kind of ordinations that became available, because the Bhikkhuni vehicle, the form, died out, right, in the South Asian world. It's all happening very nicely in East Asia, but this is before the day when people had planes. So you could be happy in China, but people in South Asia don't know anything about it. So there were women who want to ordain, or at least lead some kind of monastic life, devoted spiritual life, in places like Thailand, Burma, Cambodia, Sri Lanka, and they're like, the monks are like, what do we do with you? We can't give you Bhikkhuni ordination, because apparently, according to Vidya, not possible. It's an interpretation. Note, only an interpretation. And so they were like, oh, we want to, these women, they want to do something. So, okay, we make up a form. We call it, machi in Thailand. We, shave your head, wear something, live in a monastery, but you're not really a monastic. At least in Thailand, you're still an upasika. And in Sri Lanka, at least, they are considered really monastic, but you're not really any kind of monastic that relates to the really original form. You're a dasasila mata, a 10-precept mother, and you wear a robe, but not a patchwork robe. I was telling us, whoever drove me yesterday, nobody, do you notice? Do you notice my robe has like patchwork? No, nobody notices. They just see that you're just wearing some random brown colored cloth, like a tablecloth on you. And, but if you're a nun, there's a whole politics of it. If you see a nun, you're like, is it patchwork? You know, is her robe patchwork? Is she a bhikkhuni or is she a dasa sila mata? What is she? And if you're just wearing white, okay, you're a machi. But do we call you a nun? So in Thailand, historically, well, we don't have the word nun. We just have the word machi. So machi is just a vocabulary word for like woman, bald, roby thing on. Yeah. And so that's the only word that exists for so-called monastic women in Thai to this day. We have been Bhikkhunis in Western Australia since 2009. Do the math, that's a while now. And we have lots of very lovely supporters from the Thai community. They always like to offer dana and, you know, bring things for us and that like that. But they still refer to us as machi. And I don't take offense because I understand that that's because it's ingrained in the vocabulary that like, okay, woman, no hair, roby thing, even though the roby thing is brown, but it's still you're a female roby thing, bald person, machi. That's the word. And I put it into Google Translate because I was trying to write some questions for a Thai Kruba Ajahn teacher and I didn't know how to write Thai. So I translated every English word into Thai and I was like, nun, machi. That's the only word that came up. You know, I'm like, there's Google Translate, update, bhikkhuni, no, nun equals machi. And so that's why the word nun is like loaded. Like in English, you can say nun. But when you go to Thailand, you're like, nun, what kind of nun? What do you mean my nun? Is she a nun? Is she not a nun? What's a nun? Yeah, nothing is simple when you're a nun. But of course now in Western Australia, they call us nuns because they want to westernize things so people are not bamboozled by like, you're a bhikkhuni, what's a bhikkhuni? What's the Dharma? You know, like, so we're called nuns. Dhammasara Nuns Monastery, not Dhammasara Bhikkhuni Monastery. So it's like, oh my Lord, I mean, God. Even just the vocab words is a whole political minefield. So yes, nuns. What was your question?
Well, you've answered it quite beautifully. Thank you.
Okay, good. All right. Is there time for anybody else? I love questions. You know why? Because I feel it's my karmic retribution because I ask so many questions that I feel I would like to answer some to settle the score a little bit.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm back here, wherever I am. There you are. Yeah, thanks for being eclectic. So it's sort of an eclectic question having to do with rebirth, a strong theme in my heart. And I've seen statistics where 2/3 of Western practitioners aren't convinced of rebirth, Buddhist practitioners. And there's this whole other realm of research happening these days with, NDEs and University of Virginia past life experiences and out-of-body stuff. And to me, the common thread is that there's a continuity of consciousness outside of a body, which, if that happens, then rebirth can happen in all that researching.
Sorry, could you say that last phrase? Something about body?
A continuity of consciousness outside of a physical body.
Oh, right.
And that breaks the idea that we're materialists, that our consciousness is materialist. And I wondered, to me, there's a tipping of proof almost starting to happen with all this research. I wonder what your thinking is about that.
Yeah, well, you know what's really funny? I remember watching some kind of session of the Mind Life Institute that the Dalai Lama founded, and he said something, he likes to get together with scientists and to exchange viewpoints, especially neuroscientists. And he's like, the scientists always, they're always like, yeah, you guys meditate, but how can you prove anything without scientific measurements? That's the materialist approach, right? And he's like, yeah, and we look at you guys and we're like, how do you scientists prove anything without meditating? So I'm like, yeah, that's exactly the problem. So I feel like it depends, if there was an ability to merge the two approaches, you could just line them up, all those great meditating psychic monks who can recall their past lives. Because, it says in the suttas, the Buddha could recall his past lives. That's one of the 3 knowledges, right? So it's like, that would prove. I mean, if that was enough for you, that would prove it. It's like, yeah, but it's not, right? So then that's why we have scientific proof where you collect stories of people who can remember their past lives, where you can cross-reference whether they said they lived in so-and-so village in southern India and their mother was this name, and then you go there and you're like, oh yeah, it was.
Well, maybe I'll add that was this summer was the 50th, for the 50th anniversary of the International Association of Near-Death Studies, and the 50 years since the term NDE was coined.
Oh, this
and
is
so at the
long.
conference, there were a whole bunch of neuroscientists and biologists and a whole bunch of peer-reviewed papers out there in the medical journals now about, data.
Yeah.
Signifying rebirth. So it's really happening. I mean, there's stuff happening in the scientific community. It's really interesting, and I think there's a sea change happening that's, I think, super profound. And I just wondered, with your eclectic thinking, what you thought about that.
Yeah, well, it's strange. I don't know why, but I've never questioned rebirth. And I'm one of those people who will question anything, right? It just came with me, I guess, in this life. I already was like, I was convinced a while ago already on that one. So this time I don't waste my time. I don't have to waste my time trying to figure that one out in this life. I've got plenty else I have to figure out. So at least the rebirth one I've already done. So I somehow came into this life already makes sense. I didn't even question it. It's to me, it's already a given in the way I view the world. But I can understand what it's like for someone who wasn't born with that, and to them it's how am I going to know? How will I know? Are you sure it's really the thing? And that's why we have all these great scientists working at that level, where they are able to prove it in some way that people can get their heads around. Because if you're going to just ask that psychic monk, they're like, how do I know he's psychic? It's not convincing. Whereas if you really believe in a psychic monk, you're like, whatever he says, proof. So it's what works for you. But the thing is, the way I like to think about it is, the only way I will actually be really convinced, this thing that I say that I was born already convinced, maybe it's just a feeling. The way I will be really convinced is when I develop the 3 knowledges. And I am able to recall all my past lives, and you people's past lives, and it'd be like, oh, that's a lot of past lives to know about. So I encourage all these people who are skeptical, just work on your meditation, man, and find out for yourself. Were you Krusty the Clown in a previous life? Were you, And so, yeah, but in terms of, I think there is a sea change in that it's all becoming more mainstream. I didn't even realize until you said that NDE is a 50-year-old term. I thought it was a kind of vaguish, newish thing. But no, 50 years is... people are still not convinced. So yeah, I think that it's a big question in non-traditional Buddhist societies, organizations, where rebirth is a hot topic. And I say, whatever. If you find that that's too distracting for your practice, then just work on the practice. And if it works in terms of this life kind of framework for you, it makes your life better, then great. The practice itself speaks for itself, The wider context, I think, is important to keep your motivation going. I find having a rebirth context where it's I'm not just worried about this particular life. There's a lot of worrying to do about all the future possible lives that could be happening. That's motivating for me. But also the sense that what I do in this life is going to help me and prep me for future lives, but also the future lives of others. That's the thing. The thing that I'm not helping anybody who's just sitting right in front of me in the context of their particular problem of the week, problem of the day, problem of the lifetime. It's a much broader picture. And that brings so much more meaning to your whatever it is you do. You're doing it not just for something small, but for something huge. And so that's what the rebirth framework gives to our practice, our lives. Okay, we good? Next thing. MC.